growth is good and giving is living. We're going to talk about it on today's podcast.
I've spent the last 20 years studying, teaching, and coaching people to find their greatness and take their lives to the next level. Along the way, it's become evident that emotions are at the root of everybody's successes and failures. Worry and fear are the enemies, and it's time to forge the armor and earn the tools to overcome the two things that could single-handedly destroy your future. Hi, my name is Michael Johnson, and I'm a life coach, a peak performance trainer, and I'm the emotions guy. It's time to take back control of how you feel, control of how you act, and control of how you experience life. It's time to become a lifer, a new breed of overachiever focused on living every minute to its fullest. We are responsible for how we feel, and no one and no thing can make us feel anything. Emotional mastery is our journey, and emotional education and intelligence is the key. We are lifers, and this is Magic for Life.
What's up, lifers? Michael Johnson here with the Magic for Life podcast, and I'm excited that you joined me today because we're going to talk about growth and giving. Growth and contribution are two things that are sort of the top of the 6 human needs that we've been talking about lately. And as you go through and develop each of your needs and you figure out what it is that you need and what is a priority for you in your world, you will start to get moving up the value ladder. And remember, just like air is the most important thing. Without air, you can't live for very long. Then water, then food, right? So we've got those taken care of. But once we get up into those 6 human needs, the first 4 with certainty and variety are important. We've got to kind of figure that out and understand where our balance is and what we need. Then we've got to learn about love and significance and figure out where it is that we are and what we need. And now, once you get all of those kind of taken care of, and it's not all once, they kind of all go together, but oftentimes these last 2, growth and contribution, tend to come in after you've got those other ones sorted out and figured out. So hopefully you went and did what we talked about. You figured out where you were at, figured out what the gap was, and we're going to do that today with growth and contribution. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about growth. Do you love to read? Well, okay, it's about reading to grow. Right. So sometimes there's a sci-fi novel, right? I like to read about Star Wars. So that could actually not necessarily be about growth. It could just be about entertainment, the variety, all sorts of other things, right? Certainty that I get to hold the book. But if I was reading a self-help book, it's about growth. Now, personally, I love to read self-help books. Yeah, it's a thing. Like, that's fun for me. Not for all people, but for some people. So growth is huge. And for me, right? So what we have to think about is that same chart that we've potentially talked about already, if you've listened to the previous couple of episodes, and we've chatted about this. So we're going to talk about it one more time, just in case you didn't hear those. But it's pretty simple. If growth is a thing for you, if it is something that you need highly of, then it's going to be closer to a 10. If growth is like, well, whatever, then maybe it's down 1, 2, 0, something like that. So identify where it is that you're at right now in terms of what it is that you want. So we're looking for our ideal. Ideally, I would like to be a 10 in growth. Ideally, I'd like to be a 5 in growth. Remember, our scale is 1 to 10. 10 is the max. There is no 11. Right? That's not the kind of chart this is. We don't get to go to 11, right? So 10 is the max. I would love to be at a 10 at growth, or I'd love to be at a 2 at growth. You think, well, I don't want to tell anybody that I'm at 2 at growth. Don't worry. It's just your thing. This is for you. It's not for anybody else. Nobody else gets to judge. They don't get to see it. They don't get to look at it. They don't get to tell you whether what you have is good or bad. Just you. You get to decide. So imagine in your mind that bar chart and imagine a line going across at whatever number is your ideal. Where would you like to be? That's good. Now, what about contribution? Contribution, charity and giving back. And, maybe you donate to your favorite charity all the time. Maybe you donate to your church. Maybe it's not about money. Maybe it's your time. Maybe you going and giving your services at, a ranch for kids that are disabled, and you're helping them do things that they couldn't normally do. Maybe it's about contribution in terms of going to a food delivery place. right? That helps people that need to get food, right? Maybe it's that you are donating your services in some way, shape, or form for people that can't afford your services. Whatever that contribution is, maybe you're a Mother Teresa type where you're doing it religiously and giving back from a religious perspective. There's lots and lots of ways to have contribution. So it's not just your typical, and a lot of people are like, well, I don't have any money to contribute. Well, it's not about that. How about helping a friend? How about helping somebody in your neighborhood? How about knowing what one of the older people in your neighborhood needs? Maybe they need help getting down their steps every day because they go to therapy, and you can be there when they need help. Right? What is it that you need in terms of contribution? Now, when I talk about this, sometimes people get confused. I'm talking about your ideal. What is it that would fill you up? Like, do you feel like you have to have like a 10 and that's where you'll feel really fulfilled? Or do you feel like, if I did a 2, that'd be really great. That'd be ideal for me. Now, it's okay. It might change during your life. This isn't you can't change it. You can't decide. But where you're at the moment is important, right? Where you're at in the moment, that's what we're trying to assess. So on a 0 to 10, where would you be ideally? Okay, great. Now let's take in our mind, we're going to get a little dot and we're going to say, okay, now where am I at currently? We just talked about where you were at ideally. Where would you like to be at ideally? And now we're going to put a dot. So in the growth category, where are you currently? If you were at a 6 and you're at a 4, we have some work to get that up to a 6. If you're at a 10 in the growth department and you'd like to be at a 3, we have some work to do. You think, well, how could I be above the too much growth? Have you ever seen a college kid that is done? They're like being shoved growth down their throat, right? They don't want any more growth. Right? A college kid that is done and they're like not interested in their major, but they have to finish it out because they need the degree and they're just trying to get it done, right? Growth is being shoved down their throat and they are done with the growth thing. And that might be a case where you would mark it higher than where you're at. So you're looking at this and you're trying to get an assessment. Now, if your dot is on the line and you're at where you're at, great, you're accomplishing that piece. And maybe this isn't a piece that needs some help and work. Okay. Now let's look at contribution. Where would you like to be, right? You've marked that line. Now put the dot where you're at. If you're wanting to be at a 10, but you're at a 2, you got some work to do to close the gap. If you'd like to be ideally at a 3 and you're at a 10, how could you have too much contribution? Easy. It can actually be detrimental to you if you are contributing more than you are capable of contributing. It's sort of like trying to donate money you don't have, right? And that's kind of an interesting example, but your energy works the same way. If you haven't filled up your cup and you're contributing yourself as a service, but you haven't filled up your cup, meaning you don't have enough to give out, then all of a sudden it could be draining and you could start to feel resentful and you could start to feel all these other conflicting emotions because you're trying to give something that you don't have enough energy and enough inside you to give. And so it's massively important that we figure out ourselves on a fairly regular basis. What is it that we need and how can I fulfill that need? How can I fulfill what it is that I need in my ideal world so that I can actually make sure that I'm where I'd like to be? And this just gives you a great way to talk about it. And of course, we've got to give credit where credit is due. If you'd like to hear one of the top 3 all-time TED Talks ever by Tony Robbins, he talks about the 6 human needs, and it's a great little TED Talk where he goes in and he discusses this thing that he discovered. And it's again a branch off of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so, we know that air, water, food, shelter, those are all primary needs. And we have a hard time functioning if we haven't met those needs already, if we haven't actually already gotten those things taken care of. Because when you're missing air, nothing else matters. When you haven't eaten in days and days, nothing else matters. That is the number one priority. When those three things are taken care of and you need shelter because there's a lightning storm and it's raining, nothing else matters. Right? Growth and contribution, great ideas, not important. If there's a lightning storm and it's pouring rain and you need to get some shelter, that becomes the most important thing, right? So we have these needs. And as we deal with what it is that we need, if you've taken care of those primary needs, now we have our human needs, and we all have a different desire. I have a friend from college that had a huge need for variety. I loved hanging out with him because my need for variety was it was much lower than his. Let's get real. But it was fun to hang out with him because of that need that he had for variety, and it was just natural to him, right? I had a much more of a need for security, and so I couldn't do some of the things that he was capable of just upping and going, right? And that's huge. So you got to look at what you need and understand that if you can align with what you need and get rid of some of the conflicts and the gaps that you might have, then this is going to actually help you to be able to start to sort out yourself. And remember, in the lifer mentality, when we talk about being a lifer, the L stands for learn yourself, right? Good old Socrates, know thyself, right? Learn yourself, the metacognition that it takes to be able to get inside, learn yourself, and be able to understand how you operate and what it is that you need is priority. If you can't figure you out, if you haven't put the oxygen mask on first, it gets really, really difficult to help other people. And we are here to help other people, not just ourselves, but to help other people. And this is the contradiction, right? This is the bit of a paradox. And you have to understand that you still have to actually grow in order to contribute. And remember, those two things, just like the others, are a little bit of a paradox. They pull on each other. I have to grow, I have to grow, I have to grow. I have to give, I have to give, I have to give. And growing and giving can relate. You can grow because you're giving, but it's like they're two different cups, right? Instead of the same cup. So it's not exclusive, but you can grow in the contribution area and you can contribute in the growth area, but they do pull on each other. And so we want to figure out where it is that you're at and figure out what it is that you need and what's going to work best for you. And if you get nothing out of all of this, then just understand that you're trying to figure out if there's a gap and if you need to fill the gap. And that's it. We're trying to fill the gap. We're trying to do something more for ourselves so that we can continue to get better as humans. I hope this helps. I hope that you got something out of it today. And I hope that if you know somebody that needs to hear this message, please share it with them. Don't forget #Magic for Life and Lifers for the Win, and like and subscribe. I'd love to hear your comments. Put them down below, and we'll see you at the next episode.
Hey lifers, we expect upgrades to the base operating functions of the things like our phones, cars, and even refrigerators. Why then has it not been made a priority that we upgrade the operating systems of our emotional states? We dance around the subject of emotional mastery from a young age. We have so much more knowledge in today's world, yet we're still teaching outdated methods of emotional education, if any are being taught at all. It's time for a change. It's time for an upgrade to our emotional education. Let me help you learn how to do that. Pick up your free copy of Every Minute at everyminutebook.com.